Right.
Alrighty,
Yeah,
starting off strong here.
big
Starting off
strong.
strong with another section of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Going to be talking about one of the opening in the prologue here. For me, it's page like 40 something, but don't matter. Talking about the tightrope walker, how man is a bridge between animal and Superman, and how we can overcome ourselves, become better as one, as an individual, but also as a collective. Um, we must overcome man, remain true to the earth, not superterrestrial hopes. These are poison, and they are the despisers of life. That obviously is in reference to, because he is a harsh critic of religion. That's in reference to religions that talk of the true happiness and true life being after this one, where that's a problem because they are despising this life entirely. Now, my interjection would be that with this point, that and I think so. Again, we are both. Let me preface this all by saying we're both very novice, very amateur Nietzschean readers and philosophers here. So we're not exactly the most knowledgeable. But besides that, the point is that he knew that the that religion, the structure of religion, took the true virtues and teachings of Jesus, and perverted them, if you will, as a means of control. And this is what he's really criticizing when he's criticizing religion. He does also criticize like true Jesus, but he says that the only man that could walk beside him is Jesus himself, signifying that he understands and acknowledges Jesus's actual um, morality, virtue, mythology, whatever. But whatever. Besides that point, overcoming man, remaining true to the earth, true to, as you'll learn later too, or if you already know, then you know, instincts, being in tune with them, to integrate the instincts, to live with the instincts. This is how you overcome man. To overcome man, you have to understand man. You have to sit in solitude and reflect on who we are, learn who we are, what we are, and learn about nature as well. And that's the only way to make clear the your situation and make clear the possibilities of growth. You want to jump in on that point, Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, well, I just found this section um, really is a good point for understanding Zarathustra. Um, when he's first introduced, I think you can have um, that perspective that he doesn't love man, um, but he tells us, he went into the forest to, because of his love for mankind, um, to become the better person, and why um, he he wants to teach everyone the Overman. And I think that's a lot of the journey that we're on as individuals, is trying to overcome and become a better version of ourselves. And I thought the question was very thought provoking that he had, uh, which was, what have you done to overcome him? Um, because man is something that you shall be overcome. And, um, you know, so many people are looking for a purpose in their lives and are lost and nihilistic. And, that is such a simplistic answer. It's like, you know, man is something to be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? And whatever your perspective on life is, it's something that I think everyone should strive for, and um, it gives you a sense of purpose that you want to become better than you were yesterday. How are you going to do that? Um, how are you going to, you know, become better than our ancestors and progress us forward rather than keeping us stagnant? And why he describes us as apes, and man is more ape than ape. But
Bro,
um,
he even throws the insult that we're closer to worms than to apes,
yeah,
because
that's what. Yep.
so that to me was a really shocking statement, because I was like, oh my god, he's implying that we are not even in tune with our senses. Like a worm doesn't have the sense of sight, right? So he's implying that we have lost the connection to these senses, and that's why he's using the worm as an example of that we're closer to that than an actual ape, because at least an ape is in tune with the instincts and with the senses. But now, I mean, it's clear to tell that we are very tuned out. We're very left brain. We're very,
Exactly. And
yeah.
what
Mhm.
I think the exact quote, let me see. Oh yeah, from worm to man, and much of in you is still worm. So,
Yeah.
especially if we think about our primal ancestors, they had such a connection with how dangerous nature can be. For us, everything's in the supermarket. Our meat is cut and cleaned up for us to perfect little fillets. And as, you know, our evolution as man to making us, the top of the food chain, that we can, no matter how strong a predator can be, we can overcome them, has just been lost in, 100, 200, you know, a couple hundred years as society became more advanced. Um, how true our our brain has developed into becoming a killing machine essentially for how to survive, how to acquire meat when there's no meat around, creating traps and all this other stuff. And as we um, walk away from this amazing innovation that is um, our brain and what it is capable of doing, and transferring it into a sedentary lifestyle, one that's immersed with technology, um, it's just going to make us more warm-light the less we connect ourselves with nature and what we were actually evolved to do. Not the society has placed upon us, but what we essentially have evolved to be, which is, a predator or provider or survivor. And we get none of that in today's society.
Yes. Let me interject a point on what you just said about being an apex and killing machine. So just being a killing machine is still in the realm of the animal. That has to be overcome. And what he's suggesting is acknowledgement of that apex status we have, but integrating your conscious super state that we have. For we are inherently better, but not in a dominant way. We are different and better than animal because we have this crazy thing we call consciousness that allows us to you could say in the example I want to bring up, it allows you to understand your place in nature, but also to act on that understanding. So not just to kill and to eat, or not just to be like a feline who's just so hell bent on murder that they fucking kill everything they come
Hmm.
across, whether they need to or not, but to have a more spiritual connection. And you see this with the ancient cultures. You see them; they have a deep respect, and even with religions. I mean, I grew up Orthodox Jews, and the whole kosher process and everything is the spiritual connection and thankfulness for the animal, and its usefulness to you. So it's not just in that sense that aspect has overcome man or overcome animal, because it's the compassion and the understanding of the necessity for the cow, the necessity for the chicken, not just as nutrients, not just as numbers, not just as this being that we have dominated and we can disregard and disrespect, but because we understand that by consuming it and by using it, it becomes a part of us. And
Hmm.
in a way, if you respect the animals with that spirituality and with compassion, you're really respecting yourself more too.
Yeah, and I guess it poses an interesting question on how are we going to be able to integrate nature with a society that's becoming much more technological? Because that's essentially what he's discussing, is that, an ape is only a laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes on to say that, and man, you know, will become just that, when
Yes.
achieving the Overman. So it's like, how are we going to stop this process? Because clearly it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. How are we going to be able to integrate nature with this technological society? And what kind of, benefits are we going to receive from doing so?
Yeah. I would argue a lot of benefits to integrating what it means to be man. I would say that. I mean, it should be obvious, but I would say that in understanding better what we are, it will help better our lives in many ways that are foreseeable, but also not foreseeable. Because if you understand the instincts and their involuntary pushing of our consciousness, because that's what they're doing. An instinct, for whether it's for hunger, satiation, or sexual drive, or creativity, or movement, and I forgot the fifth one. Reflection is an instinct too. So those, let me preface that those are the five instincts that Carl Gustav Jung um, talks about and uses in his psychology. But how to, oh god, did I just lose the point? What were we talking? We're talking about instincts and integrating them and using them. Oh,
Hmm.
and that they're involuntary, involuntary drivers, in the sense that, like, I am not consciously trying to think about my next meal or procreating, but there's an involuntary part of me. There's another part of me that is actively and always engaged in trying to achieve those goals. So you can choose to, like, if you don't understand them, ignorance is not bliss, because they will run havoc on your life. They will unconsciously direct you to things that you might not actually really want to be doing, but that you end up to do. Um, or if you don't understand the instincts, your mind might, in some cases with food especially, your mind might justify, by being not tricked, but by being convinced from the instinct or the shadow, might convince you to justify with rationale a reason to be eating, whether that's, oh, I'm nervous and this will help like relax me, because you have people that are nervous eaters, or that's just one example. But without going too much on a tangent, I want to cut that point off there, because I believe that's kind of what you were talking about, right?
Hmm. Definitely. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's definitely it's interesting how detached we've become. Um, but it's not sustainable with the amount of people if everyone were to, hunt all the animals or um, farming all the land. And that's where it's very difficult to find this direction that um, we're supposed to go in, but it's also a individualistic journey that one must go on to overcome themselves. Um, and I think maybe some experience is necessary in nature, whether it's spending, um, some time learning how to live off the land, learning how, you may have to go days without eating, um, learning how, you may catch something in a snare, but a fox can take you know, your meat that's gonna keep you living for another day, um, and how connected we really are and what our place is. And I guess what we're trying to say is like the more we detach ourselves, the worse society is gonna get. The more we we've evolved, and we're going to de-evolve back into the worm after making so much
Yeah.
progress. Yeah.
Uh, to go on your point about the uh, to actually be hungry, and be out there, is that's also a good way to get more in tune with the instincts. So, excuse me, I'm sure you've like heard or know about this, but a lot of people that go on these hunts, like these guided hunts or whatever, some of them, especially like the bow hunters, the more extreme or more in tune, you could say, with their instincts, what they do is they actually do not eat beforehand, because the power of the instincts are so strong that if you are hungry, and I mean like hungry, hungry, you will actually, when you're out there, your body knows, like, oh my god, we're actually hungry, we don't have immediate access to food, the only food we can get right now is if we take down this elk. It will elevate your senses more, and I'm sure you've heard this too, so they use this to their advantage. And this is a prime example of how powerful the instincts are within us. Is that, ask yourself with this example, what is a lion that is always satiated all the time and is always, getting his nut with the lionesses. Is he motivated? Is he truly motivated to go out and risk himself for food or for whatever? No, the answer is no, because he has the things that his instincts are telling him to go and get. He's satiated, he's complacent, he's content. He becomes lazy, he becomes unmotivated, and maybe like atrophies if you're talking about the physical aspect of it. And he loses his alpha status because he's not both literally hungry and metaphorically hungry. Whereas the up and coming alpha male has those things. He doesn't have a harem of lionesses, a pride. He doesn't have he doesn't have easy access to food because he's on a worse hunting ground. He has something to gain and something to lose, and he is willing to risk it for the biscuit. So he is more in tune with his instincts, and they reward him greatly by sacrificing and by living as a true powerful alpha male. The lion has a chance to overcome this other older and lazier lion that has been there. If that example makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I went on a 3-day fast, and my experiences with heightened senses um, were definitely prominent. Like, I would go outside and I could hear a skittle drop down the block, you know?
Yeah.
So getting in tune with nature, hunger is definitely a good way. You start,
Yeah.
definitely your perspective on food changes. Like, you look at a squirrel too long when you're hungry, you know, you might start salivating a little bit in your mouth. A little bit of drip drops forming in your mouth, boy.
Hey man, that meat, that's good fucking meat right there. That that's non-GMO. That's totally organic. It's eating fucking the best nuts around. You're gonna get some good tasting meat right there.
They're right there, boy.
Like
Uh,
literally right there. Like just take a bow and arrow, just take it down, and I watched a video recently. It's really not that hard. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but it doesn't look that hard to skin a squirrel.
oh yeah,
I
you
apologize.
you can
Uh,
like a bunny rabbit, you make a little slit in its stomach and you can just tear off the fur in one
and then
second.
boom, you
Yeah.
have the meat right there. It's
It's
crazy.
it's actually unbelievable how your perspective changes on an animal once they're skinned. Because it's like
Oh yeah.
you look at a you know, like a cow or something, or deer, or whatever animal. Uh, you're like, oh my god, it's the deer, and then once it's skinned, it looks like the meat hanging up in the butcher shop in the back, and something more recognizable. But I mean, that just shows how detached we are. That
Oh
perspective
dude.
is like you can see a skinned cow in a butcher shop and be completely fine with it, but if you saw a dead cow, um, you know, your stomach might turn, or um,
To some degree, I know there's going to
yeah.
be there might be viewers out there that are vegan and would disagree heavily with that point. We hear you. Trust me, we get you. We're not speaking in absolutes here. We are not by any means following Kantian Immanuel Kant's logical conclusions. Because fuck that guy, bro. All my homies
Yeah,
hate
well,
Kant.
it's also like that's the other thing is like people didn't have the option of going vegan in past times, and when you are living in nature, you don't get the option to just be sustaining on plant matter alone. If you're in the
You get what
middle,
you get.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're in the middle of the forest and there's berries, you can only survive on those berries for so long before you get malnutrition, because you don't have that grand selection of all these, options of eating and stuff like that. Especially in like the winter, in a winter storm, there's gonna be no plants growing. Your only available option would be meat. Um,
Yeah.
and during the summer, you can eat strictly um, crops and agriculture and all of that. So
You know that also ties into a very interesting side note that I have, which is that we as a species are actually a lot different from each other than people think in terms of how we've developed and our ancestors evolved. So, like, if you take, for example, an Inuit compared to like a Mediterranean person, maybe like, whatever, they have evolved to process, and their preference for food is much different, although they're both human beings. Same thing with killer whales. You have killer whales that will literally only eat salmon, and there's killer whales that'll eat whatever they're presented with because of their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very interesting because to a lot of degrees, and of course some of those are extreme, so I'm not trying to do a straw man argument, but to a degree, we should look at our ancestral roots and see what we've evolved to process, and should eat like our ancestors did in order to keep healthy. What that means is, like, so for me, Mediterranean, my ancestral root is heavily with fish, is seafood. So I think I would benefit more by keeping it more in tune, which means I might not need to eat as much red meat, or as much red meat, and I could actually sustain better on fish, primary fish, and vegetables and fruits. So it depends on people where their ancestry is from, I believe, which is a very interesting side note on diets.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also quite a few evolutionary adaptations that we've had from the type of food that our ancestors were eating. For one example, pruning of your hands is to increase your grip underwater. So if you have extremely pruny hands, it's very likely that your ancestors were fishermen. And
That's crazy.
yeah, so there's like a lot of things like that. So it's not necessarily a flawed idea that you should be eating what your ancestors ate.
No, yeah, that's very powerful. I'm gonna return to the text here and read another little sub note that I have, which is again becoming more in tune with the instincts. He says, "God is dead now. The most dreadful offense." So the most dreadful offense used to be blaspheming against God, but
Mm-hmm.
now that God is dead, the most dreadful offense is to blaspheme against Earth. Again, super not respectful, but in tune with being connected with Earth and respecting it. This man loved Mother Nature, guys. I tell you, if you're if you're a eco-friendly environmentalist, man, you gotta love Nietzsche, because he really does love. He does not criticize Earth and nature and man at all. Well, man, he does, but Earth and nature does not. He loves that shit. So that's very powerful in terms of his, not only his admiration and affection for it, but in terms of his philosophy towards it. Um, because that, again, going back to the point previously of understanding man, is to understand the environment in which man has been living. Because we are shaped not only by, you know, our ancestor or not shaped only by ourselves and by man, but by nature and instinct. Um, this is also, I want to bring up examples. So Carl Jung, psychologist, was super into studying cultures, religions, and came to understand this idea of archetypes, which are structural ideas of like a human being that are prevalent amongst a lot of societies and cultures spanning through time and space. So, in other words, there might be an archetype of a hero or the mother in Viking mythology. That's like an idealized version of the mother, which is the same in terms of the values assigned to it as the Aztecs or the Inuits or the Africans. And so this was powerful because if you look at these as as evidence of the collective unconscious, uh, that means that on some degree we are inheriting more than just our biology and DNA from our ancestors, but we're inheriting like actual values and actual um, good ways and proper ways to live and to aspire to be. And this is again important because going back to understanding ourselves is, if you can understand yourselves more through your own ancestor and your own stories and archetypes in those, you might benefit a lot more as well. That was kind of a little bit of a side note because I kind of wanted to get into the examples. So like an example of an archetype would be like, think about the stories you love, the mythologies you love that portray good virtues and values and all that. Think about the archetypes in them. Is there the archetype of the wise sage, the individual like Zarathustra who goes into the forest or into nature in solitude and reflects, again, one of Jung's instincts, reflects on himself and man, and has grown immense power from that, and power in a good way, in a natural way. The examples you can think of are, again, one of the more popular ones in pop culture is Yoda from Star Wars. The man is a crazy kook in the swamplands. He's totally out of his mind, but he has, through being in solitude and in touch with nature, gained the wisdom um, necessary to use the Force properly, and also, like, again, become one of the more powerful. Don't get pissed, Star Wars fans. I don't know if he's the most powerful Jedi, but the point is that he has
The boy
attained.
smacks. The boy
Yeah.
smacks.
Wait, what did you say?
Yoda smacks. That's all everyone needs to know.
Oh no, he smacks hard, like, undoubtedly. But the point, sorry, I'll finish up the point here because I know I'm talking for a while. But the point is that he, through doing, again, what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about, has done. Sorry, he did what Friedrich Nietzsche talks about, and the results are there. And it's not just, a lot of people dismiss these things as just stories, but our entire understanding of morality, virtues, and all of this primarily have always come from stories. Stories serve as the best way to portray these things to us. Because again, it's much easier to remember the stories of Achilles or of Ares and the associated virtues that you can take away from their lives, than to just be told murder bad, stealing bad, don't do it. That's it. You know what I mean? But yeah, sorry, that's a long rant. You got any input on that?
No, I think you covered all of it, mate. Don't you worry.
That was a juicy rant right there. I just kept going.
There was a
Oh,
lot of
okay, so
juice in there. Yeah,
yeah, feel
so
free to jump
yeah,
in, jump in.
yeah. So I wanted to discuss. So on page 42, the bottom, what is the greatest thing you can experience? It is the hour of the great contempt, the hour in which even your happiness grows loathsome of you, and your reason and your virtue also. So I just think that's such a powerful quote and definitely thought provoking, of course. And um, what that really means to me is, if you're only experiencing happiness all the time, then what does your happiness really mean if you've never experienced sadness? If you've only experienced sadness, then, um, happiness would mean so much more. And if you're able to overcome one or the other, you can have a completely different perspective on the other. If and I think that's why, people who are depressed and, you know, have given up hope or even allowed themselves to become jailed by their own consciousness or be lost in a labyrinth in their own minds or any other examples. But being able to overcome that and reaching the other side, climbing out of the abyss, um, I can only imagine that to be, such a great experience. Not only for teaching you and opening your perspective, um, but showing how strong your character is, your virtue, your ability to overcome things that many cannot. And, um, if you've lost everything, um, it's so hard for people to get back into the swing of things or even try again because they've given it their all. So, I think what he's trying to say is that's the markings of the Ubermensch, the Overman, is a person who can lose every single thing they've hold dear and still push forward and overcome and climb and, keep hiking the mountain that is life. Um, that no, thing can hold you back from the journey that you're on. Um, no matter if you lose everything or not, or gain everything.
Yes, because in the end of the day, it's still up to you, and you still have the will to power to change that from rock bottom to up. I want to make a point of the yin and yang to you because that's a very powerful concept that spans every culture, almost every culture, of all time, from Eastern to Western. But not only do you, I'm going to add to what you're saying, you also understand through each other, through the yin, you understand the yang, and through the yang, you understand the yin, and that gives you perspectives, new perspectives, and it enables you to appreciate more of what you have. And this is a powerful concept. This is one that is talked about in a lot of religions as well, is to be appreciative and thankful to the universe for what you have, because at any given moment it could be gone. Your parents could die, your lover could die, you could lose your job, you could lose everything at any given moment. So you should act with more compassion towards yourself by appreciating everything you have. But appreciation for things you have does not come easy if you've never had to suffer, which is the importance of suffering, right? If you always have food, if you're never hungry, if you are always satiated in other means, then you kind of lose that ability to be appreciative, because this is all you've known. You kind of grow used to it, you grow complacent, you grow content, and you kind of become an ungrateful little prick towards everything you have. Where and even if you do, so in my case, even if you do stop and reflect on what you have, and you are grateful, it's hard to reach the full amount of gratefulness, because again, if you haven't endured a lot of suffering, then the yin can only mean so much when the yang is not transparent. Now, I'm not trying to like say we should like actively try and suffer, but it is always good to remind yourself. Maybe do daily affirmations like some of my friends do, where they wake up and they make affirmations of the gratefulness they have for things. It's non-religious. It transcends religion, because it's not like, oh, you have to be Muslim, Jewish, or Christian to do these things, but to do them anyways, because they do serve a powerful purpose. Maybe do that. Maybe set aside some time a day, 5 minutes in the morning, and vocalize into the universe. Not just think it, because thinking in your head is only the first level. The second level is to literally manifest into the universe through physical voice those thoughts, and do that, and that will yield greater appreciation, and all that.
Yeah, and also I think that ties into, these safe places and, people, really just accepting that people need their safe place and, um, it honestly baffles my mind that, no one sees an issue in this, like, PC, keep everyone safe culture when it, it's only making people way more anxious, depressed. Um, people shouldn't be having to take pharmaceutical, medicines in order to cure their anxiety or depression. Um, I know two people who've gone to psychiatrists and immediately prescribed Xanax or another antidepressant without even, given a try to have them um, overcome their, dark thoughts or whatever the issue is. But um, I just think, we need to strive to be better um, through overcoming um, our worst selves,
Yes.
opposed to finding solutions to hiding that fact.
Yes. I want to make one point from taking it from the section here, that is also important to remember and use as a powerful tool here. Is so man is a rope fastened between animal and Superman, a rope over the abyss. It is dangerous going across. It is dangerous wayfaring. It is dangerous looking back. It's dangerous shuddering, and it's dangerous to stay still. Which means that no matter what you do, there is risk involved. If you stand still on this rope, you are inevitably prolonging the process, not only prolonging the process to overcoming yourself, but also you are at more of a risk to falling to the abyss, to falling to the shadow, to these unconscious drivers of our lives that will push you in directions you might not want to go or might not be good for you. So knowing this, that it's dangerous any way you do it, what the best thing to do, why not move forward? If it's all dangerous, why not make something of it by going across, by continually progressing yourself? Yeah, that's that was the end there. If you wanted to throw something in there.
Um, no, no. Yeah, there was just another thing that really caught my attention was back on page 40,
uh,
when Zarathustra was going up into the mountains. Then you carried your ashes to the mountains. Will you today carry your fire into the valleys? Do you not fear an incendiary's punishment? Um, I thought that was very interesting. That sort of symbolism of um, almost being like defeated going into mountains. Would you agree with that? That his ashes are symbolic of him being
So I
defeated.
am I'm trying to find exactly where that is because I forgot. I think for me, oh, page 40. Sorry, I was on 41. Let me see if I can
At
find where
the
that is.
tippity top, second paragraph.
Oh, okay. So let's take a step back here. So Zarathustra is coming down from the mountain, preparing to bestow his wisdom onto man, and he comes across, I believe, a priest. Right? This is a priest or a godly figure. Um, and he's talking with the godly figure about his enlightenment, and he is asked, is he? Yeah. So the guy asks him, "Then you carried your ashes to the mountains. Will you today carry your fire into the valleys?" So to me, and do you not fear an incendiary? So again, do you not fear an incendiary punishment? Is that is a very that's religious, that's atonement and all that stuff. Not to me, not very important. What's more important to me is the to me it's the ashes in the fire are an analogy for the phoenix.
Yeah, well, also it goes back to what we were just talking about with, the darkest moment and overcoming it. Um,
Right.
him going into the mountain with his ashes, his symbolic ashes, is, I guess, him being defeated, in a sense, but he goes into the mountains in the solitude where he feels in touch with nature, and um, to find an answer for um, a society that is becoming increasingly nihilistic and having no belief in the life that they live. And um, while many people would think, oh, he's gone into solitude, he hates everyone, he did it because of his love for mankind and his desire to solve the madness that we've been divulged into.
Um, so okay, so now I see your point more. So if the metaphor, I guess, maybe more akin to, so the ashes would be, imagine a fire as a metaphor for man, then the ashes are the end, the death of the fire. So if you're in a state, and not of literal death, but if you're in a state like a void or nihilistic, you're kind of dead inside. So maybe he was not in a good place, and that's why he carried his ashes to the mountains to find, to find and overcome. And the fire, bringing the fire into the valley. So the phoenix arises from the ashes and is a flame anew. So maybe he again was in solitude and was able to revitalize himself and
Yes.
his wisdom, and now he's bringing it to the valley. Now mountain tops are are what? It's cold, it's high altitude, it's
Um,
very away from, like, there's not a lot of people and not a
yeah,
lot of things that
a, a,
live up there.
a lot of religious
Harsher.
buildings, temples, monasteries, all built
It's
high up in the mountains.
Would you say it's also like a harsher living than down in the valley?
Yeah, for sure. Less animals, more barren environment.
So that to me is also, again, this man, like, every sentence he fucking writes is so goddamn, you have to pick it apart because it's really amazing. Um, so again, the mountains, yes, it's, to me it signifies a harsher thing, a harsher place to thrive. So metaphorically, maybe he went deep within his unconscious and his shadow and was combating these bad ideas. Because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but when I sit alone and meditate, and not meditate in the sense of like Zen meditation, but of actual thinking, like Descartes meditation, um there's an internal dialogue, this heinous, almost like self-deprecating, undermining voices come into my head and will try and again undermine me or bring me down. And that to me would symbolize the harshness of the mountaintops, is that you're going into the harsh environment, the harsh nature, whereas the valley is more of the peaceful, warm, friendly, uh, comfortable area. So he's bringing his fire, his newfound um, wisdom that he gained through combating those dangerous ideas in a dangerous place into a much more, I guess, friendly place in the valley. Does that vibe, bro?
Oh, dude, that's a fucking vibe if I've ever heard one.
That's a
Um,
vibe, boys and girls. 10 out of 10.
yeah, and you know, even if we relate back to Griffith and Guts, when um, Griffith said he would only be friends with someone who was his equal. Um, and I guess, a lot of people throw away around the term sheep without any like clear definition of what a sheep is. And for me, a sheep is someone who wants to pretend that the harsh realities of life are not occurring and that we're in fairyland opposed to, um, you know, how dark this world can actually be and becoming the beacons of light for it, opposed
Mm,
to being, a flickering flame. Um, you want to be a roaring fire in this world that can put light upon the darkness, in a sense. Um, that's why I think, he goes into the mountains with the ashes, perhaps thinking he'd become a sheep in this world and, attached to all these meaningless things and wanted to find answers for himself and, become that equal to um, Griffith or Jesus or whomever and come back with enlightenment and strength and the ability to overcome being a sheep and becoming um, something greater, not um, de-evolving into the worm, continuing to progress as man.
yes. Yeah, because he's always bringing up that as an example. Whether that's on page 41, all creatures hitherto have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great tide and return to the animals rather than overcome man? So yeah, it's all about that. It's we have the decisions ourselves. And the power of the individual is great because if the individual changes for the better, every person has a network of people around them, whether that's family, whether that's friends. You are connecting and interacting with other people, even if you're, maybe you don't have family or friends, but you still have to navigate this world with people. If you are to grow and change yourself for the better, you interact with people in a higher and better state, and that will affect them. Um, as contradictory to how magnets work, the world of people works where positive attracts positive and negative attracts negative. Um, it's kind of the effect of the peers around you. Birds of a feather flock together. It's all the same thing. If you are so, in other words, you can utilize this though by becoming more powerful and more positive, and in a way, becoming you will notice the negative people around you. They'll find you. They'll grow not discontent, but they'll grow, um, I guess, angry at you because if you are part of like a negative crew and there's a lot of self-loathing and all that kind of stuff, and then you go and try and change your life for the better. Maybe you stop drinking or drinking as much. Maybe you stop drugs and you start picking up fitness. You'll notice these negative people around you will actually um, throw more negativity at you because it reflects on them. You serve as a mirror and it reflects on them that look at this guy, he changed, and then I can't change. Well, fuck this guy. And so that's important because if you can change and you do change, you can affect the people around you, and they will change, and then they will affect the people around them, and this spirals upward into all of society. It's up to the individual to maintain the collective.
Yes, completely, man. Uh, so I guess we should kind of, you know, point out some of the tightrope and um, kind of summarize what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading a little bit later into the. Oh, one other thing too, maybe that's important to note. So Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about the ultimate man, the Superman, the Ubermensch. Um, there is also, and he does talk about this too, the opposite. Just like there is the Christ and the Antichrist, just like there is the yin and the yang, there is the ultimate man, and there is also the last man. I think this is important to bring up because, again, if you want to understand one better, then you must get familiar with its antithesis or its opposite. And the last man, as described by Nietzsche, is one who does retreat and return to the state of an animal, only satiating himself in the physical realm um, of immediate pleasures, just like in J.S. Mills, this would be called the lower pleasures. Instead of reaching and achieving something higher and greater than this, he has resigned himself to being nothing more than a satiated pig. Now, this is important because this is a good way to understand the things, how to improve and become or overcome yourself. It's realize that there are these drives for immediate pleasure because, after all, our brains they do operate on the mechanisms of dopamine, and your brain will set up not traps but um, habits to achieve this dopamine. Your brain knows if you, I don't know, look at a picture online on Instagram or you post something and you get likes, which are people telling you that they like the things you're doing, then there's dopamine. There's a dopamine hit. And you become a victim, not a victim, you become um, almost enslaved to this habitual dopamine release. You will continue to do it because it'll continue to make you feel good. It doesn't have to be Instagram. It could be looking at memes on Reddit. It could be again pornography, but this is a no fap, no coomer zone here, boys and girls. But it's important to understand all of those, the shadow side, the last man, so that you can overcome and become the Superman, as he says.
Yeah,
Yes.
and honestly, there's just like so many examples of the Ubermensch, and really they all relate to just balance, you know, like the yin and yang. We've got the story of the two wolves who are hungry. One is everything that's good, everything that's bad. Which one wins? The one you feed the most. You've got Jesus in Christianity, Buddha in Buddhism. And even like Bruce Lee's quote about water, how you have to become water. All of these are very symbolic of what the Ubermensch really means. And for me, I think it's all about attaining the enlightenment, um, seeing this world for what it is, and being able to, um, overcome yourself. And I guess for me, that's what I view enlightenment is if you overcome yourself and become the best version you can be. That's essentially what the Uberman sort of is. And I guess since we we're on the topic of the tightrope walker, I'll read this passage. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss. A dangerous crossing, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous trembling and halting. The tightrope walker represents men who is on their way overcoming themselves to the goal that Nietzsche calls the Overman. He dies because he is alone. And I guess let me just get back to this section. I have one more note here. Yeah, so now we have heard enough of the tightrope walker. Let us see him too. And the people laughed. Did you have any thoughts on the people that laughed at Zarathustra?
So he comes down and tries to share his wisdom. His cup of wisdom is overbeareth, and he wishes to pour some out. And so he descends into the valley, into the town, and tries to do this. He notices a group of people. This is late in the afternoon. They have gathered to watch an actual tightrope walker perform. And he uses this as a moment of inspiration. He sees the tightrope walker or the tightrope, setup because the walker's not out yet, and is instantly inspired to do it there, to share his wisdom, and he does share his wisdom. Now, the thing you have to remember that he is heavily critiquing all of their lifestyles. I mean, like obliterating the fact of everything they do as being non-serving to their betterment, as being temporary pleasure, as being whatever, not the right thing to do. And as you can imagine, people in a group, people in a mob, their mentality is a lot different. They act a lot different. They think a lot different. And nobody likes being chastised. I'll tell you that. No one likes it. Even if the person chastising is correct, and I'm not even saying he was chastising, but he was kind of just like uh, dropping truth bombs on them, and they couldn't handle it. So they kind of, as a group, scoffed at him. They laughed at him with ice in their breath, as he says later, because of how cold and malicious they were towards him trying to share his wisdom. And that reaction that the crowd has isn't to the material, but again, Zarathustra is but a mere mirror. He is standing there as a clear mirror for them to really see themselves as the pigs, as the succubus, as the demons that they are. He is a mirror, and they don't want to look at themselves because they want to ignore what they are. They know what they are unconsciously. They do. Everyone does. But the rejection of this is clear, and it's clear in how malicious they were to scoff at him and mock him. And so that's my thoughts on that, on like the group of people that were not exactly enthusiastic to hear his wisdom there.
Yeah, and that goes into just we would rather hear comfortable lies than hear uncomfortable truths. And
Powerful.
how are we supposed to evolve and become better if all we do is want the safe place where no one can hurt your feelings? You're unable to hear someone say that, you need to get up off your ass and do something, or you're overweight, or, you're getting, um, you're de-evolving, a shadow of your former self, and people, not everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are willing to hear the truth and to dissect it and become better. Um, but so many are just so unwilling, and it's part of the human condition is protecting ourselves and making ourselves feel safe, and why we've um, been so indulgent in our abilities to make this um, world as comfortable as it can be. And I think that's a topic for another video on, um, how much comfort has affected our, you know, instincts and connection with nature.
100%. That is a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
We can talk about the ending of the section here, which is that the actual tightrope walker emerges and goes forth and performs for the crowd. But what happens, the tragedy of what happens, is that someone else comes up behind the tightrope walker and starts to antagonize the tightrope walker in front of him, calling him lame-footed, forward sluggard, intruder, pallid face. Lest I tickle you with my heels? What are you doing here between towers? You belong in the tower. You should be locked up. Are you blocking the way for a better man than you? And so, to me, that might be what you would call, again, what I set up earlier about the internal dialogue with my self-criticism, is that might be your self-criticism, your negativity, your almost hatred for yourself coming out like that, and will make you misstep and fall, as the real tightrope walker does. He falls. And so, to me, that's what that analogy signifies, is that although you have this voice, because again, it's a very stressful situation if you can imagine being on a tightrope, walking over near certain death, and being that stressful and that tense of a situation, there might be that overly self-critical side that comes out and just has to explode, because if you bottle up all that tension, it's going, unless there's a vent for it, it will overflow. So maybe that's what that analogy means. I don't know if you have a different opinion or perspective on that you want to share.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think another thing you can actually take from this is not allowing yourself to be defeated, right? Like,
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
give up so easily. And I think I've watched a video where um, someone was interviewing a retirement home and what they thought this generation was lacking, and it's that we give up too easily, we quit too easily. And, you know, it's like our attention span's lowering and all this other stuff. It's like pursuit and continuing to believe in yourself is just so important to the overman, especially, and just how are you supposed to get better if you give up at the first hardship, right? Like
Yes.
the tightrope walker. Oh, someone, beat me across, and then dead.
Oh no, someone else did it. I die now.
Yeah. Oh my god. Wait, what? Someone else can do it, and like you're gonna give up, you know? And that's why um, people complain about the participation trophies and all this other stuff, because it's like, um, don't give up so easily. Um, just because someone else has done it, do it more spectacularly than they did it, or something like that.
Yes. So it's also important to remember that it has been studied in psychology that negative reinforcement or negative pressure as a means to get people to do things is not good. It doesn't using punishment as a incentive, you could say negative incentive to get people to do stuff, whether that's parents to their children or your boss to you. It does not. It works, but it does not work as well as positive reinforcement. Um, and I say that because it's important to realize that neither Zarathustra or us ourselves should utilize the dark force or the negative or the abyss um, in a negative way to over ourselves, to overcome ourselves. I shouldn't say, oh, I'm not that good at guitar, I'm a piece of shit, I haven't been practicing because I'm lazy, and all these negative things, because that's actually more detrimental to the betterment of myself. Whereas if you just flip the perspective, the belief in yourself should come from yourself entirely, and your swellingness with confidence. And so instead, you should always strive to look at things as optimistic and positive as possible, because there is always a silver lining. There is always something to be learned. And in this case, maybe a better perspective to encourage more guitar playing or more reading or whatever it is that you like to enjoy to do with your life is to realize, holy crap, I've been doing this for X amount of time. And when you go back and you look at where you were and you look at where you're at now, you're like, wow, I made a lot of progress. Imagine how much more progress I'm going to make if I keep doing this. And then
Yeah.
boom.
Well, it's
Uh-huh.
it's so easy to become a short-term thinker, right? Because it's so hard to imagine, see the future. You're in the present.
Yes.
Um, and it's like, oh, I didn't, play an instrument or read my book, or whatever thing that's upsetting you, and you go, oh, I didn't, do that yesterday. Oh, like, um, I haven't done it for the past week or whatever, and it's like, you may continue to do it because you don't want to face the fact that, you haven't been doing it. But if you thought about it more positively, you'd be like, oh, I haven't been practicing, do some extra practice today. Or if you think you haven't have any time, find that time, put that work in, and follow the progress. Don't be like, oh, I've been practicing for 3 months and I've seen no progress or whatever, I should just give up. When, 3 months and 10 days, you could have a breakthrough and figure out where to put your fingers in a better position, or you're thinking more coherently when you're reading, or um, you know, there's several examples we could bring up, but um, I think that's a big takeaway is not giving up, like the tightrope walker did when someone else went across. Um,
Yeah.
and if someone does it, better than you, then you need to practice twice as hard. And just a little final point here is, um, it's not the hours you put in when people are watching, it's the hours you put in alone. It's like, say a person, who plays basketball, someone who plays with all their friends and then goes home, um, they're not gonna be getting any better than their friends if they all play at the same time. But the person who stays behind and puts in an extra 3 hours of shooting when no one's watching or telling him that he has to, or, that's the person who we should aspire to be. The person who's, who no one has to tell them to do something for them to try and get better at it and become the best version of themselves.
Powerful,
Yeah.
yes. But it also has to be something you enjoy doing.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah, to go back to the point we made earlier, which is if you can't even listen to your own will, then you will be directed by someone else's will. That's another Nietzsche, you know, thought. But and in order to listen to your own will, it has to be things that you enjoy doing. I know personally, I've struggled, especially in my youth, to find a means, an outlet for my potential. And for a while, I was really living like the last man, where, especially in high school, it would be just doing the bare minimum in school, because I didn't really care much for the material. And then coming home, I mean, I would do physical activities, so that that might be different. But I would come home and then play, Halo 3 on the Xbox 360. God, I'm so old. For like hours a day, 6 hours, stay up all night. But it's not because like, well, it's because obviously I was falling into that immediate pleasure and the dopamine, but also I didn't have a main driver of why I was doing that, was because I didn't have anything that I really liked doing. There was nothing else for me to really do. I didn't find it until later in life when I discovered philosophy, psychology, where I finally said, and through discovering that, I finally made progress with like structuring myself, because there is freedom through discipline, a lot of it, and picked up a guitar eventually because of those things. It's all dominoes. But the point is that don't because you don't have something now that you might enjoy doesn't mean that there's not something out there waiting for you or that you will run into. The thing is to always be exploring and always be um, curious and trying new things, because you will find something inevitably that you're like, wow, holy crap, I like this, I like building this, or I like reading this, I like painting this, I like expressing my creative instinct this way. So it's just a matter of finding it, and then once you do, then you have something that you love to do, and it's a lot easier. I'm sure you know, and anyone that's listening, it's a lot easier to do something when you love doing it than when you're forced to do something that you don't like doing. Clearly, but yeah, that's this has been a powerful podcast. Another solid hour, another section of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
You.
Um, Go ahead and pick it up, boys and girls. It's a fantastic book. You'll learn a whole bunch. It's very, very, very powerful. It's probably one of the like literary classics, honestly. Like, I don't want to.
Dude, classics, mate.
It really is. Like, I've seen a lot of lists of people compiling books, and you have Goethe with Faust. You have Nietzsche's Zarathustra. You have Dostoevsky's work, the Russian literature. There's a lot of those like heavy hitting books with like so much driving in them and so much powerful content. And it's one of those. So I don't want to toot the dude's horn too much, but
Yeah,
go read it. Go read it.
yeah, definitely. And like, it's so hard to find a book where like, every couple of sentences you can think about a topic for an hour, and that may not even be enough time to think about it or digest it. And that's like one sentence on one first page. And I guess it's a great topic to discuss and try and relate it to these times, as there's several answers to why society has become the way it has today, if you find an issue in it or not. But yeah, been a great podcast, conversation, whatever you want to call it. I'll let you close it out, Ben.
No, that was pretty much the finale. There is that I encourage people to I encourage anyone and everyone at the end of this transmission here on this fine day to thrust yourself into the uncomfortable, to live your life a little bit more in tune with your instincts, to go out there, run in a cold during a cold front. We're down here in Florida, so for me it's like it's 40 degrees outside at 6. I'm going for a good mile run,
Mm-hmm.
get that runner's high, do some Wim Hof breathing, cold shower, all that stuff. But just whatever it is, pick something and push yourself into the uncomfortable, and you will see how much more awake you are. That's the one thing I've realized is
Or
how much
even
more
like,
awake I
ha-
feel.
yeah, even how much stronger you are than you really think, and you won't
Yes.
find out unless you push yourself into an environment that's uncomfortable. You wake up in a bed and it's super warm and cozy. It's on you to get up, get out. Um, and whether you want to take a cold shower right away, just shock the senses that we're not going to be in a comfortable state. We're going to be in an uncomfortable state. We're going to get better. We're going to get 5-10% better every day by doing one thing that's been on our mind, that's been weighing us down. Whether it's like Ben said, going on a run when it's cold and you don't want to, or getting that workout in you've been pushing off. Um, so yeah,
What's
let's get that Overman energy going, boy.
That's right, big alpha, big chimp brand, baby. What's also important to remember also alongside that is don't when you commit, don't let your left brain overanalyzing, jargonizing side of your thinking influence you at all. Because trust me, I combat it every time I try and do this. If I don't shut it up quickly, what happens is I wake up and I get ready, and my brain's like, oh, I wonder how cold it is. And then it starts putting numbers in my head. What if it's 42 degrees? And that's really cold, and this and that. It's important to remember to shut up that part of our brains. We think sometimes our thoughts just go endlessly, and they're a bunch of useless thoughts. Not even. It's good to think, but it's also good to have good quality thoughts, not quantity. So remember just to turn that off, and how you do that is by just telling yourself, shut up, I'm doing this now. I'm getting out there. I don't care. I'm not thinking about this. Boom, go, go, go. What do you think? Pretty good? uh, we might have, boys and girls, we might have lost Ryan, or maybe I'm lost here. The transmission is still sending.
Sorry, we're working with ancient equipment here. All right, that was great.
Hell yeah.
Every,
Powerful people.
it,
We're trying to inspire everybody and inspire ourselves. Yeah, let's close this transmission out, and we'll see you next time.